Hakeem Jeffries facing backlash for a resurfaced 1992 op-ed. What could be so terrible? What could he have said that is haunting him today? Well, I'll tell you, okay? The House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries under fire for an editorial he wrote when he was a college student attending Binghamton University. In the editorial, Jeffries defended his uncle, Black Studies professor Leonard Jeffries, as well as Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan in the piece. Leonard Jeffries was criticized for comments he made in the 1990s about the slave trade and the involvement of, quote, rich Jews. He also said a, quote, conspiracy planned and plotted and programmed out of Hollywood by Jewish movie executives was to blame for disparaging Black people in films. Farrakhan in the past called Judaism, quote, dirty religion. And a black star with the details there. After his uncle lost his teaching position, Jeffries wrote, quote, Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Minister Louis Farrakhan have come under intense fire, wrote Jeffries. Where do you think their interests lie? Dr. Jeffries has challenged the existing white supremacist educational system and long-standing distortion of history. His reward has been a media lynching, complete with character assassinations and inflammatory, erroneous accusations. Hakeem Jeffries also compared Black conservatives to, quote, house Negroes. The house Negroes didn't labor in the field. They were domestic servants. The house Negro was dressed up, led to believe that he or she was better than those in the field. Most importantly, the house Negro sought to emulate the white master. He wrote, the house Negro of the slavery era and the Black conservative of today are both opportunists interested in securing some measure of happiness for themselves within the existing social order. Jeffries' previous response to the controversy told the Wall Street Journal back in 2013 that he had a, quote, vague recollection of the controversy surrounding his uncle and Farrakhan, but that he was away at college at the time and frequently referred back to statements given to the Wall Street Journal when asked about the controversy, quoting, and so when a lot of the controversy took place and my brother and I were away at school, he said, there was no internet during that era, and I can't even recall a daily newspaper in the area, but it wasn't covering the things that the New York Post and Daily News were at the time. CNN reports that Jeffries knew more about the controversy than he let on and even invited his uncle to speak at his school while he was on the board of the university's Black Student Union. Leonard Jeffries accepted the invitation and reiterated his comments about Jewish moguls in Hollywood being, quote, anti-Black to a crowd of 800 people. He also defended himself for the backlash he received from the Jewish community by comparing them to Nazis. Spokesperson for Jeffries, Christiana Stevenson, telling the outlet that the House Minority Leader does not agree with his uncle's views. Okay, the first thing, Bennie, that I thought of in reading this, besides that, whoa, let's unpack this, is that candidate, and I don't know if it's fair. I don't know if this is a fair comparison. But do you remember that fiery preacher that then candidate Barack Obama gave speech about and had to disavow? And that last part of the quote from the spokesperson that says the House Minority Leader does not agree with his uncle's views. That's what triggered it for me. But I want your take first.
Yeah, this is one of those things where, like, so there's so many layers to this, but at the root of this is this white supremacist propaganda that's put across and this anti-Semitic propaganda that's put across all throughout the United States and really the Western world. And the reason why anti-Semitism has been so deeply rooted within like the United States and Western Europe for a very, very long period of time is because all of the stereotypes, all of the like conspiracy theories, all of these things are really crafted in such a way that make Jewish people, unfortunately, an easy scapegoat for anybody who is wealthy and powerful. So when you have wealthy capitalists, for example, people like Jeff Bezos that are underpaying workers, when you have these systemic problems in society, right, which the problems are real, right? People are broke right now. People are struggling to survive. People don't have access to healthcare. There are a lot of problems that our society is dealing with, except for instead of actually looking at the people who actually have power, who are actually responsible for these problems, they just scapegoat and say that it's Jewish people. Because there are all of these ridiculous stereotypes. There's all these ridiculous stereotypes and conspiracy theories about Jewish people. And at the end of the day, it's just this anti-Semitic narrative that has literally been used since medieval times, where you would have kings that would say, oh, well, it's actually not my fault. It couldn't be my fault. No, it's Jewish folks that are doing this. And really, that's one of the reasons why anti-Semitism has been around for so long, and why, as a society, we've had a difficult time really rooting it out, because unfortunately, there are a lot of powerful people that see the benefit of keeping anti-Semitic tropes around, right? And so it is true that Hollywood, for example, has been very racist in its portrayal of Black Americans. That is definitely true. But that's not something that's orchestrated by Jewish people. That is something that's orchestrated by the racial biases of the people that produce movies, right? The racial biases of the people that are willing to put money to make movies happen, right? It's the racial biases that exist within these big media companies and stuff like that. But it's not Jewish people doing that, right? And it's just really, really on its face fundamentally absurd. But this is just one of those ways where fundamentally you have the extreme right pushing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories because they don't want to address the real problems. They don't want to address the actual root of the problem. And instead of addressing who the people are that are actually responsible, right, which is just wealthy capitalists, they want to scapegoat.
If I hear the name George Soros one more time, it's just you're just George Soros in everything, right? Okay. I actually would like to meet him so I can say, how do you handle all this, right? Okay. But it's this thing where you want to divide groups and keep people apart so you can keep your little game going. That's what it really is about. What and how do you think the rest of us should react when you have a figure like Hakeem Jeffries, who has an enormous amount of support and promise? Does he still have it? Can he still garner that support? I don't know. But when you like or love or support or believe in someone, it's difficult to call them out. What needs to be the response here? Because again, I don't know how old you are, Bennie. I'm not that old, but I've seen some years. College, we're talking about. But it seems that some of the views and the defense of them, as the CNN reporting was, that had legs beyond the college years.
Yeah. I mean, it's really it's really unfortunate because well, I guess I'll put it this way. When you're talking about representatives of Congress, we should really have incredibly high standards, right? The truth of the matter is there are literally millions of people in the United States that have never believed anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And I think it's fine to set that as a bar, even if it was a very long time ago. Because fundamentally, if you're susceptible to that type of thinking, right, even if on some level you've grown past it, right, there are people who are potentially more qualified. There are people who are potentially more capable who didn't engage in those things and might not have some sort of instinct to defend who they were in the past, right? And that's one of those things where I think it is kind of really important. But then a layer beyond that, I guess, is just the real question of if those are the types of things that you grew up thinking in college, right? That's going to shape your views. You've probably learned a lot of things within that context, right? And even if you've unlearned some of it, you might still carry that some of that around with you. And so I guess it kind of gets really complicated in terms of what does redemption look like? What does growth look like? I personally don't know enough about Hakeem Jeffries personally to speak as to whether or not he's grown beyond this. But ultimately at the end of the day, if it's something that is continuing and elements of it are continuing, I think just generally we should have a higher standard for people who are elected into positions of power, right? Especially somebody like Hakeem Jeffries, who is really high within the Democratic Party.
Yeah, he is, and thought to be the next Speaker of the House if the Dems get it back. But I'll button it with this. As we watched Hakeem Jeffries rap and quote Biggie and Tupac on the floor, he's so gifted and he's just incredible. And I've always thought of him to be so authentic. And I need to hear what is real. Who are you? What do you believe? Just don't lie to me. Don't lie to me. Because once you do that, what am I going to do with you?